What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Modern Man. This is a show where we like to tackle, discuss, and really explore the different challenges and obstacles that men go through in today's society. On the panel, the usual suspects, as you always see, Tyler Harris, Charles Russ in the building, and our special guest for today, Tim Pecoraro. What's going on, man?
Hey, man.
T-Pack.
T-Pack. Yeah.
Hey.
I'm here.
We're going to have some fun with today's topic. And this is actually a really exciting topic to discuss about in terms of raising standards, not just for ourselves, but for men. And before we kind of jump into the nuts and bolts of this, Tim, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of let our viewers know who you are and what it is you do.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And I'm a people person, man. I'm a leader, a communicator, and an artist.
Nice.
That's in my passion is people.
Yeah.
And I believe in helping people, what I call the uphill life. Live the uphill life. Anything worth having is uphill, but you can't go uphill with a downhill habit. And so I want to help people be more, do more, and have more. And there are reasons for being, doing, and having, and for them to figure out nobody else. And so I spend my day, every day, helping people unlock that.
I like it. I like it, man. Well, we're excited to have you on, and I guess we'll jump right into it in terms of standards and raising your standards. Before we talk about raising our standards, where do we set the base of our standards? Where do we think the base of standards should be in the current form?
T-Pack.
Wow. That's a great question. Because I know, it's going to be relative to your own experiences, number one. I mean, everything begins with, that domestication that you come up with in your own family, where you came from, those things that you're a product of, the environment that you've been in. And so, unfortunately, we have a disadvantage of trying to create a standard, especially when we're not sure, because it's elusive. Because we get very selective, and it's all situational. They're situational standards. And, because so many people, and I'm just going to make this comment because they tie together, but so many people they'll violate their own values, right, to satisfy a need. And to me, you have a belief, which is a foundation, and you have a value to me, which is the vision part, right? Because all of us believe something, right? We all believe something. And our beliefs, we could share them, but then they start getting differences and our opinions take place, right? But when it comes to our value part, the value is where we can start really sharing, because we may come from totally different walks of life, but if we can come together on value, we can start working together, right? But if I have a low standard, my values will come down. They are going to drop. And then what's going to happen is going to put me on shaky ground at my belief level, which will cause me, as a human being with a need, so let's just say I need certainty as a need, just love as a need, or connection as a need, I'll violate my own values to meet that need. And that's where it seems like it's an elusive thing. That's why you've got to be clear, I think, at a base level to start with the simple thing. What matters most to you? What is the thing that will not only just benefit you, but other people? And it's at a simple level. For me, like an example of a value is just being intentional about everything I do. In other words, I do it on purpose. And I want to be able to make it at least at that level. I want to start there, because then I can express beyond myself and see value come from me and out into the world.
Yeah. Now, to start in terms of seeing those standards and those values, some people might not know what their standards are.
Yeah.
They might not necessarily have a vision or a value because they haven't taken the time to either reflect with themselves or with their environments to find out exactly what it is their standard is or what their values and beliefs are. How can somebody go about exploring that in themselves?
I mean, the topic of today is how we raise them.
Yeah.
And so I think your standard is just where you are right now. It's just taking an honest look at where you are, because there's a big difference between where you say you are and where you are. And so taking an honest look at where am I right now with my business, with my relationships, with my body, with my mind, and understanding that now becomes the floor. And when we talk about raising it, it's now looking at how can we take it to the next level and raise those standards. And I think this will be a reoccurring theme for me, because this is something I've just been listening and reading a lot about lately in regards to this conversation. But if we think of standard as the thermostat of our life, see, the thermostat is where we're currently at and where we're comfortable and where we're sometimes complacent. And when we all of a sudden have periods of time where things heat up, where things get better, we'll somehow figure a way to get things back down to where our thermostat is set, to where our standard is. The same is also true if all of a sudden we go through a period of time where things aren't going so great, we'll figure out a way to get them back up to where our thermostat is set in that standard. And what I'm excited about is later on in the episode, really getting into how do we raise that standard, which is how do we raise our own internal thermostat. But the standard should just be, where am I today? And being very objective about it. You are where you are, and no matter where that is, good, bad, or indifferent, that's the standard now. And let's get on to how do we get that thing moving up.
I would offer like maybe a slight word manipulation. From my own experiences, my own trials or whatever, there are times I've been below what I would consider my standard. And, and I love to tell myself, and I guess that's also part of the episode, is raising the standard. Like, I'm never dropping below this. That's when I think standard. I'm like, that's basic, bottom line. I'm not getting worse. If I do a true self-evaluation and then I look at that evaluation and assess it, I may not be at my standard. I mean, like, no, this is bad. This can't be my standard. It has to raise. Now, as far as setting that standard, I love what you said. I mean, he went straight into the deep water, like, oh man, I'm a analytic action plan, boom, boom, boom type guy. And the fact that you explain that is awesome already. So you've already got, no, I'm giving you a clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, how we're going to get this thing done. That's my type of conversation, my type of thought process. But establishing what your standard is, there's way too many variables. I think for me to give you a cookie cutter method, it's long conversations, it's some thought, and it should be something that you really think through. It shouldn't be something that you can do in 5 minutes or probably not even in a day. Your standard, and if we're talking about as a man, that should encompass everything you do, your fitness, your mental, your work, your family, relationships, all that stuff laid out this is my standard for my life. So to establish that, it'll depend on a lot of things. It depends on, okay, how much do you value your physical fitness? Where do you see it at? What do you want from it? I just want to be able to get off the couch and be basically functional versus I want to be a savage. Yeah. Neither one of them's wrong. I think I know kind of what we would all say, but neither one of them's technically wrong. That guy just, look, man, I do 30 minutes Pilates and I walk 3 miles twice a week. That might be his standard, and he may be okay with that. So establishing your standard, the key word is actually it's yours. It's what is going to allow you to have fulfillment at the lowest level. And identifying that in several categories, however you break your life down, identifying that in each category, laying it down, writing it down, letting yourself know that this is it is kind of the base, I feel like, for setting that standard.
I really like that, at the lowest level, because really, when you think about it, you're at your lowest level when you don't know. Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of doing things. You're just doing life, right? And what Tyler said about just that really sitting down and asking those questions, not why am I doing this, why am I behaving this, but it's more of what, it's a what question. There's purpose underneath the what, that's where your why is. But I really like the introspection component with that. Is introspection gives you the insight that you ultimately are going to need in order to progress. But I really like that, like, figure it out, because one of our needs, again, it's that variety, and variety looks different for all of us, to be able to have some opportunity. For me, I like chaos. I really do. And the reason I like chaos is because, for me, I like constellation as well. I like putting cosmos into chaos. But it took me a long time to figure that out. And trust me, I got burned more by chaos than, as I'm trying to put some constellation to it, it would end up be a very detrimental thing to me, because I obviously didn't have the maturity, emotional intelligence was lacking. But I didn't start there. It was like I jumped over. I didn't want the foundation. I tried to jump all in, and I think that's dangerous for men. Because sometimes our ego can really be driving us sometimes, where we either shut completely down or we try to prove it or push too far beyond it, instead of just saying, establish your baseline. What is that baseline? What's it look like? By asking real questions.
So we all establish our baseline. We find out what our standard is. And like you mentioned before, kind of living with intent, right? I think that's when we get to the point of finding our standard and getting to the section now of raising that, living with intent. what are the actions we take on a daily basis, or we can take on a daily basis, to go from where our lowest point, our standards are set, to actually start lifting that bad boy up?
The number one way I know to raise your standard is to raise the standards of the people that are around you, meaning change the people that are around you. When you start hanging around people that are living their life at a much higher standard, it is impossible to stay the same. And so for me, that's always been the case. And I've seen it play out in so many people's lives that, again, when you think about that thermostat, when I start hanging around with people that are at a higher temperature, it is going to naturally make my temperature higher. It is going to naturally bring my thermostat up. So that to me is the first step, because that's one that really doesn't take a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of change, just by adding certain people into your circle of influence that you can be inspired by.
Can I ask you, is that something you think should be done gradually or quickly? Because, for example, I had a fish tank with African cichlids, and when you put them in the water, they say you put them in the water with their bag with the natural water first, and then you slowly take it out, because they have to slowly acclimate to the temperature. Or if they switch too fast, if the temperature changes too fast, they can die. Do you think if someone were to go from where they are and go in over their heads, as we mentioned, going all in at once, do you think that could be dangerous, or should they kind of up that thermostat slowly?
I don't know if there can be danger in adding people too quickly. I think there can be danger in letting people go too quickly, just relationally. Mm-hmm. I know that's something that I've done a bad job of just completely alienating myself from groups of friends that I had, and burned a lot of bridges and with those relationships that I wish, looking back, that I didn't. And so, yeah, I don't know if you can add people too quickly, though. I don't know if that, I can't, off the top of my head, think of a scenario where all of a sudden having a bunch of new people enter my life that are all living at a higher standard was necessarily a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I would be careful, because you're talking about human beings. You have to be very careful. You know, there's so much stuff out there on social media now with Gary Vee and people that are just like, cut everybody out of your life that's negative, even if it's your mom and your sister. Like, these are human beings. Like, you got to be careful in the way in which you go cutting people out of your life. So I think you need to be thoughtful in that process, because you don't want to burn bridges. At least in my world, I regret the bridges that have been burned immensely. So, but I can't think of a negative from adding quicker.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a capacity to everybody. So, if we get past step one, we have our standard. First thing I'm actually going to ask myself is, am I at my standard? Am I really at my standard? Because there's a lot of people out here, like you said, doing things intentionally. Well, if you're not doing everything intentionally, you may not be at your actual standard. When you step back and look at your life, you may see, well, I'm horrible in this area of my life, and I'm really bad. I'm really bad in my relationship, and I'm really bad spiritually. I need to work on those. Like Tyler uses his core 4. Like, he literally has where will tell you, put some goals in those areas to get you to where you want to be. That may just be getting to what should honestly be your standard before we even talk about raising your bar. You need to make sure you're at your bar. If your standard, I was in the military, there is a standard for physical fitness. And the test isn't the best test in the world, but it's push-ups, sit-ups, and 2-mile run. There is a minimum. It is the APFT standard. If you can't meet the standard, you got extra PT, you got extra work. We got to get you to standard before we can talk about, because you have to get the standard before you have to get to 5 before you can get to 6. You have to get to 6 before you can get to 7. So we're going to get to the standard first. Second part about raising, one good thing I feel like when you add people who want more out of life, which is what we're saying is raising our personal life standard, is one topic that we all talk about a lot, is accountability. So bringing other people into your circle who have done this, who have leveled up, who have moved up, who have pushed their bar higher, they're going to start to hold you accountable for things, because that's the quality. That is a quality trait. When you start asking me, hey, what about that business venture you said you were going to do? Where's your progress? Yeah. And there's and you may come back to me, I'm not going to do it, but I'm actually going to ask you why. I want to know why you're not going to do those things. So I think the the people, bringing in people, will help definitely. I do think you can add people too fast because of capacity. I could go to this great event and meet all these people that are echelons above reality, and I get connections with them. They like me. They think I'm cool. They like my hat.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. So I have.
do love that hat.
Yeah, I have Uncle Steve. If you're watching, man, come on. Got to produce.
Send one down.
Yeah. We gotta. So now I have all these relationships, but then when one day when Ted calls me and I'm like, yeah, man, I can't talk. I'm going over to Tyler's place with those guys, and I gotta go. So you started to cut off people because you only have 24 hours in a day. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. You might not be able to appease everyone. So there's a balance because I don't want to lose day one Ted. I want to keep him. So you need to watch as you bring in.
Is that what you actually call him?
one Ted?
Yeah.
No, it's like there's different.
One day, Ted.
I feel like I get a new nickname every episode.
different versions. There's different versions, you're gonna get some versions here soon.
You better watch out.
But yeah, I do think it needs to be gradual, but different types of soil settle differently. So I may bring in 3 people and all of a sudden 4 people just disappear that I really needed to disappear. It may happen like that, and that's perfect. So now I can go out and keep searching, keep looking, keep building more relationships. But I may bring in these 3 awesome people, but now it's, because those people are going to need things. They do, and maybe they just need that conversation. Maybe they need your time. Maybe they will need something from you, and you need something from them. You need their time, but that time is that resource. But now I have to take that time from somewhere else. I'm pretty sure none of us have. I would love to tell you, I got 5 free hours a day, buddy. I can expand. I can have more conversations, but I don't. I don't think I have one, And if I do, I got my time in the shower, time in the bathroom. But even if it's with my girlfriend, with my kids, with my grandmother, with my brother and my nephew, at church, working out, personal training, financial, I don't have it. So when I add, something has to go, and these are people. So when you start cutting people, I think naturally some people will go away just by the order of change. But to overdo it and just give a lot of people the boot exactly what kind of happened, because honestly, if you look back, it sucks that it happened, but if you still had all of those people and all the new things you're doing, something's going to suffer. It has to because of minutes, of seconds. So I do think a gradual addition and an expanding of your circle is the way to go, because it will bring that accountability and that desire to want a better standard for yourself.
So if we're surrounding ourselves with new people that are living on another level, I guess I'll pose the question in terms of whose standard do you live by?
We're all professional chameleons at one point in our life, and we're really good at borrowing color and taking color from the world and then calling it our own, when the world is waiting for us to put color back into it. 99.9% of us is exactly the same in every human being, but 0.1% of us is unmistakably you. It's like your fingerprint and mine, and none of us are the same. Never will be until you, and never after you. But deeper than that is the essence of who you are, the intrinsic stuff, your real value. That's unmistakably you. That's that 0.1%. That's why I tell people we're all a bunch of others, all the things we get caught up in. So who should you become? I think it's okay sometimes to borrow, but not pickpocket or breaking and entering, taking it. I'm taking this. It's okay to borrow someone's influence for a little bit as you're learning and you're a student. And I think that's a really good thing. But I want to add to that is awareness is of the utmost importance. I think one of the ways that you can help not only discover your bar, but also raise your bar, is learning to develop your own self-awareness, which is your self-awareness, obviously, which is actually your personal competence side, your self-awareness and your self-management. Then you have the social side, social awareness, right, and relationship management. Just in those 4 little areas, we can understand, like I like to use this weight analogy. Remember when you were a kid, you didn't know if you could lift the bar on the bench? You get a little nervous. You know what I'm talking about? And then you see all these other people. What do? You want to borrow their strength if you can. Then you start doing comparison, all these things that you do. So that's where it gets a little tricky. But if you were to say to one of them, I'm a little scared, man. I don't know if I can I got by the bar, but you jokers are throwing 45s up on the sides, right? I don't know. Can I do 2 45s? Can I do 4? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what can I do? We have to make some vulnerability there. Be aware of how you're showing up. It's okay to get some chameleon cloak a little bit from them so that they can put a little there. But eventually, you've got to start putting yours out. And I believe that will naturally help you raise that standard. So I think it's a mix to begin with. Take on some of that, get mentored, get developed. But eventually, you got to step away, you know. And I know some of you are people of faith. You know, I think you all are. But that's why I say you need a Barnabas in your life, you need a Paul in your life, and you need a Timothy. You need a Barnabas who's not impressed with you. You need a Paul that can mentor you, and you need a Timothy to pour into. And I think when you're doing that, you're going to find the exchange of all of those in all of it.
Wow. So how do you go about becoming more self-aware?
There's the $1,000,000 question.
Let's turn that on.
That's emotional.
While we're at it, that cancer thing, I've been really wanting to get rid of that.
Yeah, we're working on that too, right?
I feel like I'll take a swat at the unhittable. There's an emotional maturity that comes to different people. I mean, I've talked to people younger than me, and I've been like amazed. And I've talked to people that are 60 years old, and I'm like, man, you just don't get it. Whatever it is, you do not get it. But that also comes with, you know, emotional maturity, as me understands. Weight room's a great example. So my magic number is 275. As long as I can bench 275 and it doesn't hurt. Like, as long as I, you know, because I try to limit, you know, we've had a lot of talks about training, and, you know, if you guys were, you know, bench press is not a functional exercise. It's not. But it's a exercise. 275. If I can put it back, good. Don't care about anything over that. Don't care at all. My kids are now in that high school age, and they're like, bench press. And I'm like, well, just watch your shoulders, but have at it. But that's emotional maturity. Can I do more than 275? Probably, but I don't care. That's my standard. And then within that area of life, in that area, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't want to make changes there. Now, one thing I made a lot of changes in my church life recently. Like, I was going, but I wasn't doing anything. I was just there. You know, I go, I listen, and I'm out. Sit for the week. I'm good. Now I started participating, started bringing friends, started, you know, getting on board, started being a part of what was going on. So for me, I raised my standard there, and I need more. But but the whole point is that I was aware. But that's by analyzing my own standard. That could be a very key role for someone in becoming more self-aware. Look at your own standard and tell yourself, honestly, is that making you happy right now? What you've established as your standard. And at some point, hopefully you'll say no. But there are people who are just permanently complacent. Those people exist. And now a whole nother thought process is, are they actually in a better position in life than we are? Because they're happy. Yeah. They are happy, yeah. and they're laying in the grass with their kid, and they're happy.
So to that point, with perception being reality, if they're happy, and we talk about, I pose the question for self-awareness because everybody's going to, like, you can't tell a mother that her child's ugly because it's her child. But we feel the same way about our businesses. We feel the same way about our artwork. If I record a song and I play it for you, that's the hottest song ever. But you might tell me, no, Ted, that's a terrible song. But I recorded it, and I could honestly look at it and think it's the best thing in the world. But my self-awareness is lacking in the actual quality of what I created. So that's why I guess I posed that question, kind of leading to in terms of who do we listen to? Because I'll ask for feedback on my work, but I'm careful with who I listen to with that feedback. I'm careful with, okay, one person might just praise me up and everything I touch and do is the greatest, but there could be rooms for improvement. And if my standard's higher than someone else's or not as high as somebody else's, how can I pick and choose who I listen to?
I think you just threw three things, and if I don't say them, I got to get them out, because if I don't say them, I'll forget them. You just threw together self-awareness, value, and purpose all in one thing, like in one question, which is very awkward. So you can love your song, that's fine. You can be, if you're self-aware or not, you can love your song. But what's the purpose of the song? Is it for your entertainment? Then it's awesome. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Are you trying to take it to a recording studio and make a record? and the 10 people you talk to tell you it's horrible. So now the purpose of the song determines if it has any value. So if you're trying to take it to a recording studio and make money with it, it's not going to work because no one likes it. So it doesn't have any value. So those three things, they play into each other in determining. So I think the purpose, what is the purpose of the song? You know, what is the purpose? So free time is probably, or free, I wouldn't say free time we spend with a loved one. What is the purpose of that time? You know, if you do have a free hour just for Ted, what is the purpose of that free hour? That literally will determine what you should do. The purpose will help you give it value. You know, will help you decide, yeah, that was a good free hour. You know what, I have been tired and there's a show I love and I haven't seen it in months. I'm gonna watch 2 episodes, I got 2 hours, I'm gonna watch 3 episodes and I'm gonna stretch and relax and let my body recover because I'm tired. But if you have, so that's a great 2 hours, right? Not if you have, like I know you have your online shop. I watch. So
Appreciate the plug.
yeah. But if you have 60 orders to fill, and you didn't take those 2 hours and fill some of those orders, you know, what's the value? So just don't let the purpose determine the purpose before you start placing a value on something.
I think it's all about accountability. And so it's having accountability in each of those areas, having people that hold you accountable in each of those areas, seeking out people to hold you accountable in each of those areas. Because unless you have someone or something holding you accountable, I have just found that I cannot hold myself accountable to certain things.
You're your worst accountability.
Yeah, the worst. And I thought it was just me. I'm glad you guys are the same.
No, I agree.
So you need that. Like for me, like I needed accountability in my faith. And so I sought out one of the godliest people I knew, which was Jonathan Parker, who we had on a previous episode. And I was like, man, I need accountability in my area of faith. You know, would you mind doing a devotion with me and keeping me accountable in that stuff? And he does all the time. And then in all areas of my business. And it's just, you know, I hired a trainer this year because I hated waking up in the morning going to the gym. And I knew the only way I was going to do it is having someone there going, where the heck is Tyler at? He's supposed to be here. And so I think, you know, looking at that as that circle of influence that we begin to surround ourselves with, those new people that we bring in, if we look at a desired future standard as a goal, which I guess that's probably the definition of a goal, then who are the people that we can bring into our lives that represent our goal in that area? So for me, like faith, it was Jonathan Parker was that for me for faith. Who's the person in my business that I desire to raise my standard to? Okay, it's Joe Schmo. Well, I need to figure out a way to meet Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo may be a dude with 8 million followers on Instagram that lives in California. But I can start following and try to start conversations in the comments on his posts and try to invite him to be on a podcast. And then next thing you know, you're sitting down with Joe and he's like might as well be a friend. And you are able to somehow get some accountability set up through that, whether it's accountability and just constantly seeing the way that they're living their life and being able to compare yourself in those areas to that, or whether it's them actually like calling you out in a text saying like, hey, did you pray today? You know, something very, very, very literal. But I think that's what that circle of influence is for. It's having, you know, these groups of people where, man, I want to be just like this guy in that area. I want to be just like her in that area. I want to be just like him in this area. And knowing that that's the role that they play in my life. And all together, that makes this incredible group of people that all kind of represent this higher standard that I want to be at. That's it. That's it for me. It's just accountability.
And I like what he was saying is it's that influence because, you know, everything that we do, we're an influence. Whether we think we're not, you know, we are. Everything you do, I don't care if it's good or bad, there's influence. And that accountability is so important that we need to be a lot more mindful and a lot more discriminate. You know, we talked about even, you know, adding people too quick could be a detriment in some cases. I think so, the capacity part. You know, Tyler, you know, his experience is a little different.
And I'll touch on when you said that, it gave me this realization that that's why I messed up, because I forcefully put people out because I was taking too many on.
Yeah. And that's standards, right? It's going to affect us and have impact. And I call them necessary endings. and I think they need to be done with care. And this is tying directly into your question, and looking for that, bringing it to somebody. Anywhere I go, whenever I speak, I work with some great organizations. I coach people one-to-one. And there's 3 questions I have. Do they know that I care? Do they know that I add value? And can they trust me? And that's it. And when I leave, that's what I'm thinking about. Did they experience my care? Did they experience me adding value to their life? And do they know that, can they trust me now with what I said? Was it true? Was it authentic? Was it integrous? Was it congruent? And that's important. So when I'm going to bring something to someone, even talking right now, to me, it's like, it's not mine, but even putting the things out here, I trust this enough, right? I know from this connection, right now I'm meeting the two of you, I'm hearing you, these things they gravitate, what's on the inside, they connect, right? Because you can only attract what you are. I mean, that's the way it is. And you can only reproduce what you are, all right? So I'm feeling this, and so for me, I feel like care, add value, trust, right? So I wouldn't mind throwing an idea out here to this group. And I think that's and once again, it's a standard again. When do you introduce it to someone? Ask yourself those 3 questions. How do I know they care about me? Can they add value? And can I trust them? But you got to be equal to that as well. Do I care about them? Can I add value to them? And can they trust me? So.
It was a great point about, we just kind of, without saying the word, groups have standards. When you surround, so when Tyler was saying, you bring those people in, you become a group, groups have standards. Even the guys that I mentor, I'm like, now, and then the more I expect of myself, the more I expect out of you. So it's 100%. It's like when you get a professional certification, that organization has a standard. Now you have to do this, and this every year. You didn't have to do it before, but that wasn't your standard before. Like if you want to be a CPA or you want to be a CFP, you have to have, it's a credential to keep it, to meet that standard. Down there's additional requirements because groups do have standards. So totally rolls into, like you're saying, changing that group, and if you don't have it, you don't create it. Bring 4 or 5 people together. I think we've all met people through, and this is our first time meeting you, but we've all brought people to one another, that have become kind of a different type of group that, you can reach out to and throw ideas off of and talk about things. So that's awesome.
That's the perfect segue into the next portion here, because we're talking about raising our thermostat, raising the groups and the people we surround ourselves with in order to increase our standards. And at some point, as we increase our standards, there's going to be people around us that don't meet our standards. Yeah. How can we, gently hold others to our standards? Because not everybody can simply be dismissed and left behind. If we're talking about a spouse, a sibling, family member, a childhood friend that might not be up to your standards, how do you softly impose that on others?
You don't.
Do you not hold others to a certain standard?
I don't hold people to my standards. I hold them to their standards. Mm-hmm. I would never hold you to my standards. Okay, what if my standard's 275? My standard's 275 to. So I'm not going to drop you just because you say your standard is 225. That's not it. Now, if I feel like your standard is beneath you or you could do better, I'm going to tell you that to your face. I'm going to tell you because I'm your friend and I want you to have the maximum out of life. If you're like, no, it's not what I want, that's fine. That's okay. I'm going to hold you to your standard. The only time I feel like it becomes an issue and I need to sever that relationship is your standard pulling me down. But I'm never going to hold you to my standard. I'm always going to hold you to yours until the point where your standards start to slow me down. Then, because one of my standards is to keep it going. That's something for me. I got to move. I got to keep growing. If I feel like you're hurting me, then it's time, to maybe sever that relationship. And it's not, hey, Ted, I'm not talking to you anymore. Tyler, we're not friends anymore. I got to go. It's just to slow down on the phone calls, slow down on this, and those relationships will slowly disintegrate. And it's a much, or reduce themselves greatly. Like instead of seeing talking to somebody 3 or 4 times a week, you end up talking to them once a month. But yeah, you got to hold people to their standards. We can't set someone else's standards for them. Because my standard, if I was setting your standard for you, it's for you to live a full life and be happy. But if we all wrote that down, if we all went in corners and wrote that down and came back and put our paper down, we each got to write 10 bullets. I'd be willing to bet none of us would even have the same bullet out of 40. Like not even one. 10 bullets of what our standards are. So I would just challenge it, make sure once I tell you my standard, hold me to it. Poke me in the hey buddy, you said this is what you want to do and you're not doing it. What's up? How can I help you do it? So that's my initial take when you say that, holding somebody to my standard.
If you were in Charlotte and you were in Atlanta and I was in Tennessee and you were down in Savannah and we all said let's meet at this building and you pull up Waze app, Waze is going to give you 3-4 options each to get to the same location that we're going to. It's almost like the way our maps are in our own heads. The only difference is we don't get all those options in real time. And there's not a bunch of satellites helping us. Yeah. And so it is important, though, when we understand another person's journey. See, that's the whole way a GPS works is you say where you want to be, and then it tells you, it looks at where you are, and it helps you get there. But see, what we're doing is we're in different locations in our worlds and our own mental maps, even subconscious maps that have happened to us. We're living in a current world and we keep importing the past to try to make a future. And it gets too heavy. And what we need to do is talk to each other on that journey using the Waze app as we're going to the same place. Because me coming from Tennessee, you saying, Tim, why are you dragging? Well, I'm coming through the mountains. I don't have a problem coming up, right? You two are hitting, 85 coming. He's hitting up from the beach, feeling good, right, from Savannah, right? I'm coming through the mountains and hoping there's not a landslide, right? Because I'm gonna get all you guys to buy me a new car. But that's what happens when we're trying to project our journey on other people, instead of getting a better understanding that my Waze app and your Waze app is different, and we're coming from a different place. Function's the same, but we're getting different data. Become curious about that person's journey. Learn to talk on that trip. Learn to talk coming from different directions. Because our goal is still to be in that destination. And I can't help but to beat this thing, but it's back to values. I can get a Jew, a Hebrew, Jew. I can get a Muslim. I can get a Hindi, an atheist, and an agnostic to sit down. And if we want to talk about beliefs and opinions, we're going to battle all the time. But if we can find out what we value, and what the standards are that they're going to put into it, we can do a lot of things together. That's how we can work. And anybody in Washington, that's the problem. You talk too much about your belief and your opinions instead of what we value so we can move this country forward.
That's true. And I think as a group of people here, we all have a desire to serve. And whether it's with a formal coaching relationship or whether it's mentoring, which I know you have a huge passion for, I think we have to be careful for that desire to serve others that are living to a lower standard, allowing that to pull us. Yeah. And I think the focus is, we've got that one person that we can all think of, that relationship that we're always having to pull them out from whatever they are, get them back on track. And in 3 months later, you're going to have to pull them back out of that hole again. I think it's so important for us to, on the other side of that, have people that are pulling us. Because unless we have more people pulling us than being pulled, then just like your uphill, downhill can't go uphill and a downhill. Yeah. We can't. You cannot move forward if you got more people pulling you back than forward. And I think that's extremely important. And I think the way Charles was explaining it is how you do it, because you develop this understanding of what their standard is, and it's almost like you're in a way dissecting yourself from the scenario, because you're saying this is their standard, this is mine. I'm going to view them as a completely separate. It's like a completely separate side of you that's keeping that person accountable and having those conversations where it doesn't pull you down, because increase is increase, progress is progress, and you can have someone at a substantially lower standard. By seeing them progress is still going to inspire you to progress, right? And it doesn't matter where that is. Like I would be fired up to see someone bench 135 that's never benched over 100 pounds before. And it's going to fire me up to do whatever that incremental progression is from my life. So I think that's important, just to keep things in perspective, but to always make sure that you are adding people, whether it's virtually or in real life, that are pulling you forward, sources that are pulling you forward.
So what does it look like when you start to chase your standard? What is kind of some of the rewards you enjoy in life when you recognize your values? I'd love to get your insight on, how someone goes about recognizing their values and then start living towards those values and those standards. What are some of the rewards and the benefits from doing that?
For me, people ask me, why are people so important to me? Because, I grew up in so much dysfunction and so much brokenness, just trouble. I tell people to me, I view myself as Hamilton. The song opens up, how does a bastard orphan son of a whore, And, but I love my mama, And, but that's what I found out was I fell in love with people through the fact that I wanted to grow. And so I fell in love with personal growth. And then I started thinking of the stories of people because I had one too. Not just the narrative I was telling myself, but the one that I wanted. So then I could put a demand on something. So if I have a desire for it, I have something that there has to be pressure. What good is a burden without any weight, right? If I want the cream out of the little, if I'm going to make a cake, say we're going to do some little, they do them cooking shows, and you see them kids making crazy things, I'm like, that kid's got some talent. He needs to go to school, or something. But if you don't squeeze, you don't get that stuff out of that piping. You know what I mean? It takes pressure, right? If we want to grow something without pressure, a seed won't break and release the essence. So what's the story that applies to pressure? Because pressure is the privilege that we're all looking for. That's the privilege to me, is the pressure we all share. It's facing peer pressure. It's facing your story and the narrative and facing the pressure of saying, what narrative do I want to write? I got blank pages. Hopefully there's more ahead of me than there are behind me, and that notebook will listen really good to me if I start writing, right? So for me, the benefit is doing back to introspection and really getting to the lowest, discovering what the lowest thing is, what makes me happy, what makes me smile. Now, happiness to me is okay, but I'm a joy guy. Joy remains. To me, happiness is like little cobblestones that you put together, some grout, you lay them all out to someone's house, but when you grout them, that's when you can walk in. It's foundational. It's the collective of all the happiness that makes joy bound together. And so it's finding those pieces of little things like that help you determine and find those values to me and then set standards to say, I'm keeping them. I will go no lower than this. And I may have to have a necessary ending, but that may not mean that I won't fellowship or talk with you, but it means that I'm going to be further away from you, right? Because I can't function that way. But the byproduct is, man, in peace between the stillness where silence is the sound. When I lay my head on my pillow, man, I have peace. And it's not in a flattened space, man. It's sacred. It feels cathedral like this room. There's space in there. I don't feel crushed by things. And that's, to me, the value of doing that. So. I don't know what that means, but
That's approval right there.
Wait, do I have to cry? I'm not ready for that. See, I'm moving too quick. Well, man, that was awesome. Awesome explanation, awesome thought processes. When you talk about rewards, I have my method. I say it over and over. I'm a system guy. My major in college was systems engineering, and I actually liked it, weirdly enough, because it's systems. It's this to this to this. And that's what I like to give people. When I spoke at GVL Hustle, one of my things is I'm going to literally give you something to actually do.
Yeah.
I want you to walk out of here tomorrow and you can do this. I'm not a pie in the sky person. That's just never been me, because the same thing you say about happiness and joy, I say it about motivation. One of my favorite dudes here talk is E.T. E.T. is awesome. But if you listen to E.T. at 7 o'clock in the morning when you get up, where's that E.T. speech at 12? Man, you were born for this. You were going to do it. You were going to crush it. Man, You get to your desk, you see a stack of paperwork, it's 9 o'clock, ET is over.
Yeah, it's done.
It is over. You were back to this dude, bro.
Yeah.
So, finding ways to maintain. So I tell people, for instance, okay, if someone comes to me as on the financial side, they're like, man, I'm in debt, I need help. I said, okay, here's what's gonna happen. You're not gonna get straight out of debt. You're not gonna just chop it. You're not gonna. I can give you a budget, and I can say, okay, based on your budget, you'll be out of debt in 18 months. You're not gonna be out of debt in 18 months, guarantee you, because your car's gonna break down. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So let's say this. Okay, that's your first credit card. When you get that paid off, tell me some things you want to do. I want to take my family on vacation. What's that gonna cost you? It's gonna cost this much. When you get that paid off, go on vacation. Go. Do it. All right. Then the next one, when you get here, what's something else you want? Well, I've been wanting a new custom suit. It's going to cost me like $700. Now, when you pay that second card off, get your suit, buy it. And they start to question, is like, but it's going to take me 2 years to get out the other way. It's going to take you 2 years anyway.
Yeah.
And you're going to be miserable. So the point of this thing that we're doing right now is not to be miserable. It is not to run face first into a brick wall the whole time. We're not put on this planet. We're not here to just work and work and work and work and work. It's not why we're here. There needs to be, so if you can't figure it out, I love peace, but that doesn't work for a lot of people. Me and my girlfriend literally have peace arguments. See, baby, I mentioned you 2 episodes in a row. I'm doing good. Check.
Peace argument.
Yeah. We have peace arguments. When I get home, some days, I'm sure we've all had the day. You get home, you don't want to talk, and it's not because you're in a bad mood, but you were just beat down. Yeah. You were hustling, you might have had 8 meetings, conference calls all day. I've been peopling all day, but I just can't do it. And then you got to go to your significant other and you got to people some more with them. Yeah. I get on that couch, I'm just like, I just want peace. Now, I've done everything that I needed to do. I handled my business at work. And I just want that peace. I want that space. Put on a movie. Yep, sit your feet on my lap, but let's just zen. That doesn't work for everybody. They need rewards. They need those small things. I've never been a reward guy because as soon as I'm constantly, I want to push that bar. But as soon as I get somewhere, that's my thing. I'm like, okay, I made that standard. Let's get a new one. So I'm looking for the next one, or I'm looking how I can expand upon the one before. But if you don't, plan it. Put it down. Reward yourself. It is okay. It is not, people try to make that nowadays, I think they listen to these narratives from all these guys that are on social media, and it is hustle, but they're not telling you to kill yourself hustling. They're not telling you to hustle yourself to death. They're not telling you not to enjoy your family. They're not telling you to miss your kid's birthday because of a meeting. No. What they're telling you is, when you are at work, work. If you have to work a little extra, do that. But there's more to life than just that. So program, if you can't do it, just like Tyler was saying with the text messages when we were talking in the last episode with the text messages, how he had to put it in to make sure he texted his wife, or put his face on to make sure he did it. Put that stuff in there, man. It's important. It is important. You know how much, if I go on an extended vacation, you know how much, and I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I just need vacation. I'm itching to get back to work. By that, if I do a 5-day vacation, oh man, I'm almost shaking by the end of, because I like what I do. I'm ready to get back to it. But I've enjoyed, I've refreshed, I'm ready mentally, I'm ready physically to go back, to get back in there, but I feel like people miss out on that. It's the one thing I use, it's a little bit different from what you do. I literally have I have 2 other blocks on but one of them's fun. And I call it fun, but I mean program that in. Some people would consider that part of your relationship blocks with your wife, but literally it's get out of Greenville once a quarter, get out of here. Go somewhere. That's one thing that's on my list for my 90 days. It's me and the lady, we got to go somewhere. Either me and the lady, me and the kids, me, the lady, and the kids, whatever. But you got program it, man. It's okay. It's okay, and it's necessary. And the purpose of all that work is fulfillment. So program your fulfillment in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, if we look at these standards as goals, I think it's important to have short and long term. And that the entire purpose of life is to constantly be going after higher levels of standard, going after goals. But if we only have these super, super long-term goals, then we can one day die without ever hitting them. And I think that will rob us of joy and happiness that we should have had on this earth. And so I think we have to have certain standards that are attainable, certain goals that we can reach, and then we can celebrate those victories along the way, because that's what brings me happiness, is when I do, hit a goal, and whether there's a reward there or not, it doesn't really matter. It's the accomplishment of like, man, I wanted to get there. I got there. And as most men, we say, where to next? But that's the whole process. And so when we look at this idea of a thermostat, and again, as a standard, and how do we raise this? Another area where I've seen work in my life to raise my standard, to raise my thermostat, is to jam pack a ton of activity into a short period of time. For me, 90 days is typically what that looks like. So for 90 days, just doing as much activity towards these goals as you've ever done before. It's kind of like, in a pool, you got the water line. Yeah. You flood a bunch of water in a pool, it's going to raise that water line. When the water goes back down, that water line's still there, showing you where you got to. And to me, that's what that crazy activity, because it's not sustainable long term. Yeah. You can't sustain at this level. Like, I'm talking about a level that you physically cannot sustain for more than 90 days. But going at it for 90 days, raising that watermark, raising that standard, raising what you thought may even was possible, then when your activity level goes back down to normal, you've still got that water line there that you remember what that looks like, you remember what that feels like, you remember what that tastes like. And then next time you do this insane amount of effort, it gets you above that. Now you've passed that water line that seemed crazy at first. Now you may even be able to reach that water line with your normal activity flow. And then now it's time for another just spurt of massive action in a short period of time. And by doing that over the course of your life, and it's not every 90 days, but once or twice a year, doing just an insane amount of work in a short period of time will take your game and your standards to another level. And if you're simultaneously doing that while surrounding yourself by other people that are holding you accountable for all these things, it's a powerful way to live your life. But I think unless you are celebrating those victories along the way, then you're going to be missing that fulfillment that we all ultimately want. Because there's no point in getting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, having achieved this success or this standard that we wanted, but not being happy. I mean, that to me, I'd rather be lazy if I'm going to be unhappy either way. So why go through all this massive effort? Why go through all this struggle? Because there's going to be struggles on the way to meeting any standard. Why go through all that if you're not going to be happy at the end of it? And I think the way to do that is by having standards in all the areas of your life. If you've got a standard for your mind and your relationships and your body, then when you reach the business standard, you can look around and say, oh man, this is awesome because I'm in the best shape of my life also. And I'm in a great place spiritually also. And my wife and I are great also. But if one of those things get out of check, then it'll always be, oh, this is great, but there's this big gap here. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's going all in all areas and surrounding yourself with other people that are doing the same thing, again, proportionate to wherever they are in their life.
So quick question before we wrap up here, in terms of standards as they're being met, do you think it's important to continue to raise those standards? Do you think complacency with the standards could kill the growth?
I think you have to. Mm-hmm. And that's the uphill, downhill. I can't remember. It was awesome. But I think if you do not raise your standards, you will fall below your own. And the more I've been learning about this, like your brain will create obstacles. It will create problems for you to have to solve to be able to stay the same. So if you don't have a standard that you're chasing, you're inevitably you can't just say, okay, I've made it. I've gotten here. This is just where I want to stay at. And I'm good. Your body you're biologically, you will create problems and struggles to be able to stay there that would take the same amount of effort to stay there than it would to get to the next standard.
Yeah, and I think it would be really good to let people know that perfection is not a standard. Because that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to find this perfect walk, perfect talk, perfect life. It's not going to happen. Perfectionism, all you're going to do is you're going to beat yourself up. It's kind of like you know, in sports. I remember because I was a freestyle wrestler, and I remember, you know, my coach would be like, listen, I'm not trying to get you to practice until you get it right. I'm trying to get you to where you won't get it wrong. And he goes, but you're going to get it wrong because you're dealing with another person. It's a lucha sport, you know, it's person on person. It's combat, right? So when we get to baked into perfection and try to put that as standard, I think we need to release ourselves out of that and get more into the word of excellence. You know, and I think if you really want expansion, you need to be excellent. A lot of people try to expand and grow, and what they'll do is they will relinquish the responsibility of being excellent. And so determining what excellence is for yourself, you know, because growth can only be sustained by structure, which I know you like steps and practical things. You know, this building would not be here without the proper structure. So as they add on to the building, based on where beams are and everything else, you can add to it. So it is going to be a regular process. We're going to enhance some of our standards. They're going to improve. They're going to go up a little bit. Some of them may just stay. I mean, it's high enough, right? And not high enough meaning it's good enough, because we know good's the enemy of great. It means it's solid. It's bedrock. It does not need to move. But we can always get it challenged because something happens. And right, because we cannot control this world. We can't control situations. We can't control people. The only thing we're in control of is ourself, our mind, hopefully. We're working on it. And what's going on inside of us. Other than that, that's all we got. So just make sure, I just want to say, don't let perfection be a standard. Yeah. It's elusive and you'll never win. And every time you reach it, you're going to find out you missed it.
Every time. Well, guys, if you've made it to the end, some of the closing points here is, first and foremost, audit your current position and find out what your base standard is. Secondly, surround yourself with those who are living at a higher thermostat level. I love the analogy with the thermostat in terms of what level you're living your life at. Increase that level. Surround yourself with folks who live at a higher standard, so you can then again raise yours and continue to raise your standards as they are met. Don't become complacent with where you are. So continue to grow. And our main worry, it sounds like, isn't that you're going to set your standards too low and meet them. It's that you're never going to chase the higher standard. So set the high standard, reward yourself along the way. And I want to close with a quote my dad told me, which really kind of changed the course of my life. He said to me, son, set your standard and demand it. And don't accept anything below that from other people. Since I've done that, I've grown a lot personally, and I've seen the people around me grow. I've seen my circle grow as well. So if you're listening, set your standard and demand it, and go out there and be a modern man.